Hello everybody! We are making a slider today. Specifically, this is going to be our slider. Right now it doesn't slide. It's just a circle on a line. But we're going to make a slider that's going to control the thickness of the line that we draw. So I can draw a nice line. And then if I click and drag the slider by clicking on the knob and dragging it along the track, then it would make a thicker line. But it's not working yet. So it doesn't slide, it doesn't change anything. But in doing this, we're going to find out exactly how to make that happen. So I'm going to show you here. This program I've drawn is clearly a little bit different than the one we've been using. And my intention is that you need to be able to adapt this code to your program. So it's not important that it's exactly the same or not. Like everybody's program, everybody's Sketchpad is different. So hopefully it doesn't throw anybody for a loop. So just to get going, what we got going on here is we got the setup. We have the draw for drawing the line. This makes the squiggly line. You can check out an older video for that. You can just take a look on the website. And then we got our toolbar of stuff. Here's the actual white rectangle that is the toolbar. And here is the slider. This is the track. Here's just a line. Notice it goes from basically 50 to 150. So that's 100 length. And then we have the ellipse, which is the knob that you are going to be able to interact with. You can click and drag it, and that's what we're going to do. So let's actually start with that. First of all, the knob, we want to be able to click and move it. So if it's going to move, you can't say like your coordinate is 50, because 50 is always 50. 50 can't change. But we can put a variable there. So I'm going to make a variable up here. I'm going to make it a float variable, slider x. This is, or maybe knob x. I'm not sure what you guys want to call it, but it's the x position of the slider's knob. I'll call it slider x. I'm using capital X, doesn't really matter. Why float, and what's a float? So a float is a decimal number. It can be a number that includes a decimal component, so 1.5, for example, is a float as opposed to an int. And the reason we're going to do that is because we're using the mouse to move, and the mouse coordinates are floats. And so we've got to make sure that this will work nicely with the mouse coordinates. So it's going to be a float. And we're going to stick that over here. This is in our draw function, down here with the ellipse that is our knob. That's going to become slider x. And we have to start it somewhere. If I run this, slider x is 0, so the knob's going to be like off the track. No good. So in our setup, that's a good place to say, hey, slider x. You're going to start at, well, whatever number you want, really. It's your choice. 50, we'll say. And that means it'll start at the bottom of the track. And that should make that happen. But of course, look, no clicking and dragging. It doesn't work yet. But that's okay, because we have it set up now. This is now possible for this to change. So how are we going to change it? So basically, this knob is like a button. So we're going to use the same code to see if you're clicking on a button, and we'll also check to see if the mouse is pressed, because if the mouse is on top and the mouse is pressed, that means we can interact with it. So we're going to make an if statement. That's going to include two possibilities. So you can say, hey, if mouse pressed, and we also want to say an addition, and if we're on the mouse on the ellipse, then we can do something. So how do we put in two conditions? So I got this condition. There's one way you can do it is two if statements. So I can say if mouse pressed, and then inside I can say if, and then do the code for the hovering. This is one way to do it. So I'll show you how to do that first. So say if mouse is pressed, and then it'll check first thing once that's true, if the mouse is inside of the slider. How do we do that? That's a distance function. So we check to see if the distance between the sliders, the knobs, x and y coordinates, and the mouse is less than the radius. So what's the radius of our knob? Well, looks like that's 20 wide, 20 tall, so 10 is our radius. And then what's the position of our knob? Well, it's slider x and 50. This could be anywhere, right? So we have to include that variable inside of our distance calculation. So that's the first point. That's the center of our slider. And then the second point is the mouse. That's given by mouse x and mouse y. So it says, hey, if the distance between the knob's center and the mouse cursor is less than the radius of our button, of our knob, then we can go ahead and do something. And then the two of these must have succeeded in order to get into this line of code here. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to move the slider. How do we do that? We're going to change slider X. How do we change slider X? We can set it to mouse X. What? How does that work? Well, wherever the slider goes, wherever the mouse goes, we'll just assign that value to slider X. Do you see where that might cause a problem? Let's see if it works, first of all. So I'm clicking, and sure enough, whoa, the slider is moving. But I can keep going into the wild blue yonder. And that's not a healthy thing for sliders to do. You shouldn't be able to drag. Oh, I've dragged it off the screen. I've broken. Imagine if like Photoshop, like opacity worked that way. What would happen? It's just redonkulous. So we're going to add an additional line of code. So now that we got it like mobile, we're going to make sure it doesn't go too far below or too far above the line. And let's just figure that numbers out. The x coordinate, the minimum has got to be 50. Can't go lower than 50. The maximum's got to be 150. I'm just looking at my track, looking at the x coordinates of the line that is my track, and I'm finding out that information is true. Is that going to be your numbers? Probably not, but you're going to have a line that makes your track, and that's going to determine it. If yours is vertical, then it's going to be the y coordinates that's going to determine it. So what do? Well, I can use an if statement to figure that out. I can say, hey, slider x, if slider x, slicer x? I don't know. Slider x ever gets less than the minimum, then we can, hi Mr. Erickson, we can just stop it. We can say, hey, slider x, did you get less than 50? Did you go lower than the track? Are you trying to get off the track? No. Slider x, you are 50. You are stuck. You are permanently there. Well, if it ever tries to go below. This is how you make a minimum happen. This is sort of, this if statement makes it so the knob can't go below the minimum. If this was a vertical slider, it would probably be slider y, the y coordinate. Couldn't go above if it's going down. But anyways, that's the story. So this will work. Let's test it out. I'm sliding, bam! I can't go lower. Look, bam! Oh, I'm trying. I'm slamming it. I can still go the other way though. I still go up here. So how do we do that? Same thing, just an if statement. If slider x is greater than the maximum number. What's the maximum number? Well, look at your track. Look at your line. The track stops at x coordinate 150. So it gets bigger than 150. We can say, hey, if slider x is bigger than 150, no, never, not today. We'll just make it 150. Anytime it tries to go above, bam, slam it back down. And that'll make our track actually a track. Look, boom, bam, swack, whack, it just can't get off. Oh, but you notice that if you code this in and you kind of play with it, you'll notice that this, it's kind of derpy. Like it slides, but easily like falls off. So what you can do is you can actually give it a little bit extra room to maneuver. I actually don't like to use the radius for the knob because if you move quickly, like it just falls off. The mouse moves too quickly. So I like to give it a little bit of an extra leeway. So like 20 or 30, whatever number you think is appropriate. And then it's just a little bit easier to use. It's a little more forgiving because the mouse can actually go a little bit outside of the button still and like still control the slider. Hey, wow, we got a slider. Yeah, it's sliding. But look, I draw, and like the thickness doesn't change. So how is it that we can connect the position of the slider along this track to increase the thickness? And also, what does it mean for it to be at the bottom? Like how thick is the minimum and how thick is the maximum? Crazy times. This is the question that we're going to answer right now. So this is a math problem that you may have experienced in the past. It's sort of the same idea of, we have a quantity, a number, slider x, and it can vary between 50 and 150, but we want to turn that into another quantity, a thickness, and maybe we'll choose that to vary between 0 and 20, or whatever number you want. So like, how do you convert between ranges? This is the same kind of problem as in math when you or anything, when you get mark on a test. Say you got like 11 out of 17. Well, what percent is that? You want to know, like, what is the percentage? You want to convert that into a number that's out of 100. You're converting from one range, 1 or 0, I guess, to 17, to another range, 0 to 100, because that is more familiar. So that's the sort of same thing. We got a range from 50 to 150. We want to convert it into some kind of thickness. So first of all, I'm going to make a thickness. I'm going to make float thickness. That is going to be a variable that is going to be given a value. I'll give it a default value right now. I'll just call it 1, whatever. And I'm going to plug in this variable so it actually means something. I'm going to plug it into the stroke weight where we're doing the drawing of the line code. So instead of drawing line thickness always 1, I'm going to put in the thickness variable because now that can change. And it doesn't really change yet. Just because I plugged in a variable doesn't mean anything changes. But there's a potential there now for thickness to change. If I set thickness to 5, for example, we would draw a 5 pixel thick line. So what we got to do is connect this variable, thickness, with the position of slider x. Where is slider x? So the way we're going to do this is with something called the map function. And oh my god, this is the hardest part of processing. So hang on to your hats as we do this. So here's the deal with the map function, map. What it's going to do is it's going to take a number, and our number is going to be slider x. And it's going to take that number and look at it and check and see where it is along a certain range. And then it's going to, and we can specify this range right here. So the range is going to be whatever your code is for your track. So I got 50 and 150. That's my range for my track. So that's what you put here. So slider x can vary from 50 to 150. But then I want to have map produce a number that is in a different range. And I said I want my thickness to be 0, or I guess 1 to 20. So what map does is it takes a look at slider x, and it sees how far along this number line is it. If it's at 50, it's going to choose 1. If it's at 150, it's going to choose 20. And if it's somewhere in between, it'll pick the corresponding value that's the same distance along this number line to figure out the value for thickness. And how do we connect this to thickness? So the word thickness isn't here. Here's what we do. We say thickness equals that. Oh my gosh. I am expecting many, many questions about this. My explanation, no matter how I have done here, and I think I've done a mediocre job, it's just not going to click for a lot of people. And a lot of people will just type this down and be like, I don't know, it just does a thing. So please do engage me with some questions about this. I'll try one more time now that you see the final product. So what we're trying to do is we are trying to figure out, like, we want to make this control the thickness. And its distance along this track is going to determine, right? So if it's down here, I want it to be really short, small thickness. And when it's at the end, I want it to be a big, fat thickness. And if it's in the middle, it's going to be halfway along that range, right? So that's what this is supposed to do. So how do I get it to control thickness? So there's multiple steps here. The main thing, or one of the main things, is getting a variable to control our stroke weight, specifically for the line that we're drawing with the squiggly line code. So that variable is thickness in this code. And then after we do our sort of mouse press and am I clicking on the slider stuff, check it out. I'm going to assign thickness a value that's a mapped value. And what that means is we take a variable, in this case slider x, which represents how far along this line we are, and we give map a range. We say slider x is going to be between 50 and 150. Please give us back a corresponding number that's between 1 and 20. Yeah? What do you think? So if it's halfway along this number line, it'll produce a number that's halfway along this number line, and then assign it to thickness. Yeah? I don't know. I've taught this many, many times, and this gets so confusing. So please you're not sure, ask me a question, and we'll make sure we get this figured out. So let's do it. Let's run it. See if it works. I hope it works, or I've been lying to you. Line. That's our usual thickness. Watch this. Max it out, and now, whoa, super thick line. In the middle, well, 20 specifically. In the middle, it's like, probably 10. Here, it's probably 5. Here, it's probably, approximately 15. How is this magic possible? This was just an ellipse. This was just a track. I mean, it was just a line. Like, now we've turned it into a functional slider. Do you know what? That's how all sliders you've ever encountered. Like, do I have a slider here? There's like a volume control. Where is it? Here. Just slider. Look at this slider here in Windows. Do you think this is actual physical knob that's controlling things? No, this is not. This is just a shape and a track and pictures, and it's all sort of if statements and maps and things underneath that's controlling all this stuff. It's all an illusion. It's like that there is no spoon moment from The Matrix. Anyways, I'm getting a little bit silly now, so I'm going to stop. Hopefully this was helpful, and hopefully you can get your own slider working. Please put it wherever you like. Do you have to put it here? No. And if you just type down this code with these numbers and these numbers, you're going to get it up in this corner. So you got to figure out, how does it move? What do these numbers mean? How do you adapt these things? That's really going to be your test of, hey, are you understanding things or not? So I wish you good luck on that, and I'll be coming around to evaluate your other older projects, or the animation project when you guys are watching this. Okay, bye.